So thank you very much today for inviting me to come along and talk about developing your inclusive approach. I've just got a few thoughts really to share with you. This is based both on the work that I did while I was on secondment with EPSRC last year, and also what I've managed to implement as part of being the network manager for Connected Everything, which is a digital manufacturing network funded by EPSRC to help help research and help research leadership within the domain of digital manufacturing. So developing your inclusive approach, why? This is something that I spotted on LinkedIn just last week, actually. I thought it was really fascinating. A dinner with pretty important people, CEO dinner, the Munich Security Conference. I'll just let people have a quick look at that photo. I'm hoping you can see that in some detail on the screen. Inclusive, diverse. I don't know. It suggests to me that perhaps we still do have something to think about in this area. Another example. This one, on the face of it, might look, it might think, why am I pointing this out? Obviously, Greta Thunberg there in the middle, a young, diverse, there is some diversity represented there. However, for the purposes of perhaps photographic license, that was actually the photo. So still we find in the 2020s that literally diverse voices are literally cut out of the conversation. I don't know whether people picked up on this at the time. It is a couple of years ago now. And was it just artistic license that enabled, that change, or is it something else happening? But again, it's really making the point that an inclusive approach is something that I think is really important. So what do we mean by developing an inclusive approach? Well, I really like this image here. We talk about equality, diversity and inclusion, but I think one of the things that I'm really keen to think about is justice, which is at the end. So if we have a look at that first image, you can say that everyone is benefiting from the same support. So, everyone has been given that little box to stand on so they can see the game of football over the fence. However, even though everyone's been given the same support, it's not actually helping everyone. The second is maybe, getting closer to equity. Someone needs some different sort of support to enable them, to do the thing that they want to do. So, that's helping, that is helping everyone. But actually, justice is really thinking about what are the systemic barriers which are actually stopping everyone from doing the thing that they want to do anyway. And I think obviously that's a bit trickier and a bit harder, but I just think that image really, kind of helps to encapsulate what I'm trying to think about today in terms of that inclusive approach. So in terms of some of the practical things that I've been doing, and particularly while I was on secondment, so I shared the secondment with one of my co-University of Nottingham colleagues, Emma Hadfield-Hudson, and together we were seconded for 1 day each for 5 months with EPSRC to really have a look at the ways that we could be practically supporting embedding EDI into particularly grants that had already been awarded. And that was the focus, that it was a post-award focus for this project. And it's not that EPSRC hadn't done anything about this. They'd been working hard on it for like 18 months, 2 years before Emma and I kind of like temporarily joined the team. And so there was a wealth of work for people to, for us to start working with and start leading with. And some of the key principles of this piece of work was, lots and lots of options have been explored. It was really, really important that this piece of work was about co-creation with the community, with the engineering and physical sciences community. It was definitely making sure that this didn't feel like it was being done to anyone. It was definitely being done with them. It was really important that this had a practical element to it, and what we produced was really supportive, that still people completely understandably, there is still a fear factor associated with, trying to do things within the space of EDI. Am I going to get it wrong? Am I going to offend anyone? How's it going to work? So part of what we wanted to do was just accept that, acknowledge it, but also say that it's okay to make mistakes, and mistakes are part of the journey. And also really try and create something which suited people regardless of what stage they were at on their EDI understanding. So for those who were right at the start, or for those with more experience, we'd have a document that would kind of like speak to everyone. And really give people the opportunity to empower people, to start making some changes in this area. As I say, the secondment was March to July last year, and I'm really pleased to say that later this month it will finally be published. So if anyone is interested in actually seeing the final document, then it should be published on the EPSRC website. Unfortunately, the timing of the secondment and the timing of some massive UKRI website changes means that unfortunately this document has taken some time to finally get published, but it will be next month. So if anyone wants to connect with me, and I've got my email addresses at the end of the presentation, I'd be delighted to share it with them. So in terms of what we did during the course of this secondment, we developed the expectations with the EPSRC community. We had over 15 conversations with EDI champions across multiple UK universities. So we spoke to a huge amount of people, had lots of brilliant, ideas and conversations. It was really, really exciting to have those, to meet those EDI champions who were so committed to making change in their specific scientific area. We then, when we pulled all that information together, all those thoughts, we then made a proposal to the EDI Strategic Advisory Group, which is chaired by, or was formerly chaired by Professor Sarah Sharples. She's actually moving on now, as she's had a significant role change herself. So the final document was signed off by that Strategic Advisory Group, and then the document was then handed back to the local EDI team to then implement. And really, it was, I suppose in a nutshell, that sums up kind of like the work over the 5 months. So in terms of what we did, when we started with the draft document for us to start working on, there were actually just 4 themes, which are actually 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your screen. But as a result of having the conversations with everyone, with all the people that we spoke with, we actually realised that a couple of areas, were possibly lacking. So one of our key recommendations really was to add 2 extra themes to the embedding approach. And the first one was really speaking to the point about saying, the first step in, making a difference in equality, diversity, inclusion is actually just committing to making time and doing something in this area. And I think one of the senses that we really got through all the conversations we had is that a lot of people feel that this is like trying to boil the ocean. There's so many things that we could do. Where on earth do you start? And it just ends up being put on the too difficult pile of the to-do list, which is probably already, far too long anyway. So really the first thing that we thought is that just commit to doing something, and small steps do make a difference. Obviously, we do want to see, tangible change over time. However, just making those small steps will make a difference, and the cumulative effect will make change happen. So that was the first theme that Emma and I felt really, really passionate about, and just really clear that this isn't necessarily, it needs leadership, absolutely does need leadership, but actually really recognising that everyone in that research team can contribute to something in this area. So again, not saying that it all has to come from on high leadership, actually everyone has a role to play in this. So the second area, as you would expect, was good practice in recruitment and selection processes for all elements of the project team. And this was absolutely critical, and definitely playing, on some of the themes that have come out of team science, and really thinking about, if it's not a diverse team, if it's not an inclusive team, then that's really going to impact on the research that results. So really thinking about that in recruitment processes. So, using things like blind, recruitment processes where possible. And we've got some examples of those. So again, ensuring that diversity is very much key to all the activities that we might do as part of our research, being really, really mindful of that. And I think, the joy of being online, has opened up, events to perhaps people who may have not been able to travel, people who may have had, caring commitments, all that diversity. So I think there's something to really consider in terms of, how we actually disseminate our research, how we get research participants involved, and ensuring diversity in all those activities. Also, we wanted to create diversity in the actual research environment itself, so inclusive and accessible environment. And so we made sure that we pulled out examples of where universities have got really, strong processes with regards to things like how to report bullying, and really tackle some of those difficult issues which can happen in the research environment. Ensuring career development for those in the team. Again, one of the things that we're particularly mindful is particularly those who are, perhaps in their early stages of their career. They're, at the, it's potentially those shorter term contracts funded grant by grant, and really making sure that that career progression is embedded within the research and within the team, so that those people can continually progress throughout their career. And finally, that the research itself, in terms of the design and the outputs, are inclusive as well, that it is that the research outputs itself are inclusive. So in terms of what we did is that we explained those 6 themes that I've just outlined, and then we really wanted to give some very, very tactical and practical examples of how to make that work. So this, so the expectations guide document itself is just actually 2 pages long, and we were really, really keen to keep that really nice and short and sweet. But then alongside that, we spent a huge amount of time researching good examples. So even if those examples don't particularly work precisely for the sorts of research that you might be involved in, at least it gave people, a thought to hang off and go, well, I don't like how that's been done, but what we could do is this. So it wasn't trying to create, an absolute rigorous process of saying, this is absolutely how you have to recruit people. This is how you have to run your events. It was just really giving people those opportunities to have a look at what others have done, and then find your own way. So the key things, as I said, the key thing really about this was about making time for equality, diversity, inclusion, and we really felt that was the most important step. If this isn't thought about either at grant application stage or in the way that the research is being managed, then it's simply not going to happen. We were really keen to make sure that the actions are not about ticking an EDI box, but actually what will make a real difference. And we were really keen to kind of like avoid that thing of saying, so if you've addressed all the actions, across the themes, then actually you're doing a great job. One thing that I've certainly learned since I've been involved in equality, diversity, inclusion is that the world changes very quickly, and perhaps, a strategy or a thought that perhaps you maybe had a couple of years ago, actually with learning and experience, things change. So it really isn't about ticking an EDI box, it's about thinking about what makes a difference. And also, it was very keen to say that this isn't about putting people into kind of like their protected characteristics pigeonhole. It's really thinking about how we support people. It's really rare that just by thinking about protected characteristics, so age, gender, sexuality, religion, will all come in neat little boxes. They don't. All these, people are brilliantly complicated, and we need to celebrate that. And people have lots and lots of diverse needs. So actually, let's think about people as opposed to just thinking about their protected characteristics. And I think that was one thing that we were really keen to emphasise this about. One of the words that gets bandied around is the intersectionality. So where all those things lap over to create the fantastic teams that we work with. The other thing that we were really careful of is that people who perhaps are vocal in this area or have made differences in this area and become known for that end up being incredibly overburdened. So I think people will know, there's a pretty awful statistic out there that I think it's only 1% of professors in the UK are from a black or are from a black background or are black. And I think that means that individuals do end up being incredibly overburdened, and they keep on being asked to be part of a grant program or part of to speak on subjects. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is through our approaches and through working harder, on making our approaches more inclusive, that we should be increasing that pool and being mindful that that those individuals are probably being asked a lot. So what we need to do is increase that pool. And one of the things that we've done through Connected Everything is making sure that actually when we ask speakers to speak, and online events have made this really, really practical, is that we've said to them, can you bring a couple of your, perhaps, early career researchers in your team to share the platform with you? Let's actually, make that platform diverse. And especially, with the opportunity of online events, that's not asking anybody to do any extra travel, but it really is literally sharing the platform. So more and more people are getting the exposure to speak at events, to get involved, rather than always expecting one person to respond to those asks. And again, one of the things we were super keen to do is involve people and not do this, not do EDI to them, get them involved, see what works. So in terms of what's worked for me in terms of Connected Everything, one of the things that I did was work on a piece of work which tried to capture what we wanted to achieve in terms of EDI for the Connected Everything network. And I developed, over 6 months, I must admit, it wasn't an overnight piece of work at all, but I developed a 2-page document which explained the EDI principles for the network and what we were committing to as a network and what we will try to achieve as a network, and how transparent we will be about that and what we will publish as a result of our efforts. And what I really felt by taking the time to develop that, there was numerous iterations. It was shared with the project team, it was shared with the advisory board, and shared with other people with specific EDI expertise, was that has given me a living document to live by and given me kind of like permission to really push forward on some of the things that we wanted to do to improve how we were doing things on Connected Everything. And I genuinely believe that through having a really transparent document that's on our website that people can read, that we can be held account to, and I can help push that in terms of the way that we design any of our calls for funding, that it has really helped make a difference, and we have seen, and that very explicit commitment to EDI has actually really improved the network that we've now got. So yeah, all of these things take time, but I genuinely do think it's worth the time investment. So this slide really is a pause for thought, and I thought it was quite interesting that Deloitte have actually created 6 personas of strategic change as applied to diversity and inclusion. And I don't know how well you can read that. I tried to make the text as big as possible for the slide. But it really is a range, and I just like this as a pause for thought about where people might think you might be in terms of this, in terms of this spectrum of where where your thoughts are and on your personal approach to EDI and creating increasingly diverse and inclusive environments for your research. And I guess what I really like about this is it really resonates with what we found during this course of the secondment, is that the last area is about being committed to take personal responsibility for achieving diversity and inclusion, rather than thinking it's someone else's job. And I just thought that this was interesting for people to perhaps take a moment of reflection to decide, where are you on the scale? Is that somewhere that you're comfortable with? Are you interested in moving? What might you need to do to move on that scale if that's something that you want to do? So in terms of some of the top tips that we came out of from the work, the absolute thing that I would really encourage people to do is have a go. How will you, what are the small things and the steps that you can do so people appreciate that an effort has been made to be more inclusive? So one of the really simple things is just making sure that you're pronouncing people's names correctly. If you don't know how to pronounce someone's name, that's absolutely fine. Ask them, and if you need to ask them a couple of times, that's okay. But it's better than doing that. Better to do that rather than get someone's name wrong. That's not a great way to kick off relationships. So just ask people. As I say, a lot of people, told us, that it's so easy to make a misstep in approaching equality, diversity, and inclusion. But if you do spot something that hasn't worked so well, that's okay. This isn't getting everything right absolutely first time. It is about making progress. And perhaps if you spot something that hasn't worked well, then one of the things that we kind of encourage to do is make a kind connection. So perhaps may not flag it in front of the whole room, in front of everyone, unless it's something that's particularly serious. But I'll perhaps give that person some kind feedback, at the end of the session and say, "Oh, next time, do you think we could do it this way?" And one of the ways that perhaps I've done it, I spend a huge amount of time in meetings. And often, it's the, early career researcher's voice that sometimes gets asked last, in terms of the opinion. So actually, why don't you swap it in the meeting? Make sure that the ECR gets to, talk about their ideas first with the experienced PI or investigator, then being able to pull together the summary. But at least then everyone in the room, has had a chance to make their voice heard without being dominated by perhaps the more experienced voice. Think about how you can embed these steps into your own work. What is important about your role? What is it that you could do? Just again, what are those small steps that could add up to making change? We also think about allyship as well. So again, what is it? So you might not have. You might not have a disability, or whatever that that diversity point might be. But what can you do in your role to make sure that it is supporting colleagues, and you are witnessing that, and particularly in cases of microaggression, making sure that those do get called out and they're not accepted. Again, as part of the work that we did, we've built, and as I say, hopefully it will be published next month, a huge resource bank to help you continually build your learning. And also, find safe environments to ask questions if you've got. Most universities do have EDI expertise on hand, who are really, really willing, to help you, work this through, think this through, or, just talk within your research group about what's comfortable within your research group. But again, it's just absolutely the number one thing is being prepared to give things a go and make time for it. So that, I think, is my whistle-top tour of what I covered in my secondment and what I've learned from Connected Everything. Are there any questions?
I had a question, Deborah. I've no idea if you can see me or not.
I think I can see you back.
Oh no. What would if you give just one bit of advice to somebody starting up a new network or a big project for them to be equal and diverse and inclusive, what would it be?
I think the first thing I would be, if it's a brand new team, is ask them for their experiences. And just say, if you've had experience, and whether, and if it's a researcher who's, straight out of their PhD, it doesn't matter, so ask them for their experiences, ask them how they would like to meet. And I think, it's really, really important to think about who's more extrovert, who's more introvert, and playing to those strengths. It might be obvious I'm a relatively extrovert person, but my goodness, if the world was full of loud voices, that wouldn't be a good balanced world. So particularly find out, how you can connect with those introverts. What are the best ways to talk to them? So I think my top tip is to go out there, talk to people. And I think also one of the things that we absolutely know is disability is really particularly underreported. People don't even want to talk about that. So only by building those relationships might you find out that perhaps someone does have a learning difference, and actually that can bring a massive benefit and strength to your team. But unless those relationships are built and you find out about those, find out about learning differences, or find out about those individuals, then it's going to be really hard. So start the conversations.